So, this is Louis, and I thought that rather than continue to play Grand Theft Auto 5 religiously, which is what I have been doing since the new update came out, and a little bit of a disappointment there, and it seems like quite a few people are disappointed as well by it, but it's not really the breaking story that people think it is. I see that apparently the update has been banned in something like 50 countries, and people are like celebrating that when it's like, well, congratulations, you as an adult can't play fictional gaming in a game. You know, you kind of have played yourself in that you don't actually have the liberty in your country to have access to content that is otherwise innocuous for an adult. I don't understand why people think that just because they don't like a practice in a video game, that somehow that translates to therefore the government should regulate it out of existence. I don't really get it. Maybe this is the difference between an American and you Europeans, but I would like the option to play something or not. You know, I have the update, I've gone to the casino, I've won and lost money, but I've put none of my money into the game. Why you think that that should be restricted is something I don't understand. But apparently, you know, monetization bad, or whatever bullshit you people have cooking around in your brains for centralizing government. But speaking of centralizing government, I want to talk about a couple things. And it's the Green New Deal and climate change, that deal. But also the use of children in propaganda. So I have a playlist on my channel, which I can't quite remember the name of. Maybe I'll take a second to look up that playlist, because I used to do videos in this playlist every once in a while, just because I would come across content that neatly fit within that playlist category. It is countering childhood propaganda campaigns. So this is a little bit different. Originally, this topic was for just ads that were targeted at children. But what I'm talking about here is, in fact, leftist campaigns that use children as either a propaganda technique or are using them for the sake of shielding themselves from criticism. And I see this very routinely now. This is something that I saw every once in a while, maybe a few years ago, but recently I just see it nearly every day. And it is almost exclusively, I was about to say exclusively, it's almost exclusively on the left. The rare exceptions are like the girl that played mini AOC that was bullied off of being online. When that happened, and I said it on Twitter, and to a lot of people agree with me, that they shouldn't, the parents should not be doing that in the first place. I'm sorry your child was bullied. You put her out there. So while the leftists that went after her did what they did, you are at fault for putting her online in that position. She was a public figure. You say, oh, she's a child. Yes, she's a child. I don't know if you've been online before, but it's not in a nice place. You're going to get death threats. You're going to get mean things said. You're going to get pictures of different people that people have come on and all sorts of gross, disgusting, potentially illegal things. They're going to happen. Welcome to the wild, wild west that is online. Terrible things happen every second of every day. So knowing that, putting your child in that position is your fault. You should not have done that. And I think that if the right is going to be principled in this matter, because it seems that a lot of people agree with me that the use of children in political propaganda is immoral and should not be done, if that is going to be our principle, then we should say anytime that another mini AOC or someone like this pops up again, where you have a right-winger using their kid for the sake of, even if you want to call it satire, it's political propaganda, that person should be told, stop doing this. They should be ratioed. They should, be quote tweeted and said, stop doing this. Stop abusing your child, exploiting your child for the sake of what you call satire, but is in fact just, a takedown of a political figure. If you want to do it, that's fine as an adult. Stop using your children. Stop feeding your children lines for the sake of putting out political propaganda against another political figure. Stop doing that. And I'm glad that that mini AOC girl is now gone. She should be focusing on her own life as a child. It should not be being exploited by her parents for the sake of getting retweets and likes on fucking Twitter. It is immoral. It should not be done. And what happened as the direct result of them doing that? They got death threats and they got harassed by the left and all the rest of it. That's in part your fault. Stop doing this shit. And so what I want to cover is two things, okay? We have to address the issue of climate change. It's something that I very rarely talk about, and I know that it's also something that Sargon very rarely talks about, and he gets flack for. I've seen that floating around, is that he gets flack for not talking about climate change, and I'll address the elephant in the room that I think he doesn't want to, and that is climate change is, at this point, nothing more than a naked mechanism for the left to centralize an economy. And I'm going to point to the Green New Deal as the greatest example of this, where the guy that wrote it, which is the National Socialist that works for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, just flat out said that the entire purpose of this was for the sake of centralizing the economy. It was not about fighting climate change, it was simply about socialism. That was his intention with the Green New Deal. And that's what I think most of this is, because it exclusively comes from the socialist left. They're the people hand-wringing and haranguing about climate change. And when given the opportunity to come up with a mechanism to deal with it, it's a plan by a National Socialist to centralize the economy. I highly doubt this guy and his intention and AOC's campaign and all the people that endorse this, I doubt this is the exception. I think this is the rule. And it's one of the main reasons why climate change is not in my top 10 of concerns. You know, I'm concerned about the economy, terrorism, Islam, immigration. There are many things that I'm concerned about within my top 10 of political concerns. And I'm sure we all have a top 10 list of what we're most concerned about. I think that most people have in their own mind, whether they recognize it or not, and they enumerate it. I think most people have a top 10 list of what they're mainly concerned about. And the top 10 are pretty much everything that they focus on. And so when a politician speaks to one of those top 10, they pay attention. They might say something else that is, something they don't believe in, like they're in favor of abortion or they're against abortion, they're in favor of the death penalty, they're against the death penalty. But if that's not in the top 10 of that person, they don't really care. If they come out and say, well, we need to centralize the economy and they're a capitalist, that's one of their top 10 because they're a small business owner and they're afraid of higher taxes, then they pay attention and they dislike that politician. Hopefully that's a concise way of explaining to you why I am not concerned about climate change. It's because it's not in my top 10. And I do not believe the fear-mongering around it, because most of it appears to be from dishonest sources that simply want to centralize the American economy at the detriment of everyone, including me. Another part of this, and it links to climate change, is this girl, autistic girl, Greta Thunberg, I think is her name, where she is a tool. She is a tool for propagandists that are internationalist socialists. I can't say precisely who is behind her and all that because I don't really care and I haven't really paid attention to this. But I do know from listening to this girl speak and seeing how often she's flown around the world, giving speeches, giving lectures, someone is coaching her, someone is putting words in her mouth. She has NGOs behind her. And I guarantee you that these are not altruistic left-wingers that are behind her. I guarantee you it's socialists that want to centralize the world economy and that are internationalists. The 20th century was nothing more than one long internationalist socialist conspiracy, and it was. That was what the Soviet Union was. It was an entire century of an internationalist socialist conspiracy, just because we're in a new century doesn't mean anything has changed. And that's what I think this is, because it wouldn't be the only example of it in existence. Notice I'm not saying that this doesn't mean that climate change isn't real, that mankind isn't playing into it somehow. I think that with the amount of pollutants coming out of Asia, it likely is affecting the global ecosystem, whether it's the oceans or the air or whatever. There likely is a consequence to mainly Asian pollution, for the sake of putting it concisely. Because in the West, we actually care about the environment. We're investing in the environment. We're investing in renewables, green energy, all this shit, despite the fact that, as in Germany, it is a fucking failure. This is a waste of money, because the technology is currently not there. In America right now, we're going through a natural gas and fossil fuel in general, gasoline, fuel, boom. It started under Obama's administration, and it's really kicked off under Trump's. We're in a boom time economy right now under Trump, and in part it is fueled by a fossil fuel boom. There was no such thing as peak oil. That was fake science, and right now we are exploiting our natural resources for the sake of, productivity, cheaper oil, cheaper gas, the rest of it, cheaper fuel, cheaper energy. That has efficacy. That works. We all know it works. Cheap is always better when it comes to energy than virtue signaling. And I'm sorry, but if you look at Germany as any example in the trillions spent, it's just a virtue signal economy. It's not a real economy. Without the government pumping trillions into it, it does not exist. And so that is not economically viable. Natural gas, gasoline, oil, those are viable. And so ultimately that's what I'm in favor of, because it works. It's not something that's going to cost me, or if I was German, taxpayer dollars to simply exist. In America, it's not much different, by the way, for solar or wind or anything else. It's mainly pushed by the government, by NGOs, lobbying the government and having the government fund or give subsidies to this in multiple industries. The renewable industry in and of itself, it is simply that the market is not there. And I know people that are going to try to contradict me on that, but solar and wind is not nuclear. Nuclear even still requires public funding and public oversight. But with wind and solar, I'm sorry, the technology is just not there. The demand is not there. The technology is just not there. It's something that requires the government to prop up to even exist. But getting back to Gettr here, Gettr is a propagandist. And the classic example of how I'm right on this is Neil Hamilton on Twitter. He's a UKIP guy. Mocks her. Mocks the issue of climate change, and he calls it a climate hoax. And like I say, I'm not going that far. I just think that surrounding this issue is a whole heap of leftist propaganda for the sake of centralizing the economy, whether it's worldwide or in America. He mocks this happening in the UK with the Extinction Rebellion, which I'm not going to get into, mocks Gettr, and is almost ratioed in response. I don't think he was ratioed. I'd have to double check. But almost ratioed. And what are people saying? Oh, bro, you're mocking an autistic child. For Neil Hamilton and I imagine what this is for us is about liberty. This is about what we are able to do within our own nations. And I sympathize, despite the fact this guy's British and I'm American, I sympathize as a nationalist to not want other nations or international NGOs or internationalist socialist conspiracies trying to regulate national economies, trying to use international bodies to regulate against nations for the sake of something that is questionable, whether it's the science itself or the intention behind it. And I very do think the intention is where you can be incredibly skeptical and have an immense amount of evidence to bolster your position. But when you tweet out criticism of this, of which Gettr is the spokesperson, you get ratioed or potentially ratioed. And what is everyone's response? Well, you can't make fun of a child. Oh, you're denigrating a child. Oh, you're so mean. You're so disgusting. And it's like, no, you are the immoral ones. You are the ones that took an autistic girl, a mentally defective girl, and you are the ones that chose her as your spokesperson. And you did that as a means of propaganda. This is a technique. This is entirely fucking cynical, and you know it. You know the purpose of this is cynical. You can ratio him all you want. You can get your 400 likes and retweets saying what a mean man he is. You're cynical. You're lying. You're doing this intentionally for the sake of your own political power. That's what all this is about. And nakedly so. This is immoral. And unfortunately, it's just one of those things where if the right isn't keeping their mouths shut about it, they're doing it themselves. They're trying to mimic what the left is doing. And I see this fairly often, whether it's the use of left-wing language, and I see a bunch of people on the right do this. And maybe I'm guilty of it to some degree. Mimicking the language of the left. Calling things problematic in the same sense, that by the same definition, that left-wingers do. It's like, why are you doing that? Why are you playing into their hands? Like, are you unaware of Saul Alinsky? Are you unaware of tactics and strategy in politics? Are you just that retarded? Or are you just a useful idiot for the opposition? Like, I don't know what to say, but when the left engages in what is clearly an immoral tactic, don't mimic it. Don't copy it. You know, just because something is popular doesn't make it fucking moral. And if you actually want to win the culture war or the political war, why are you playing by the fucking left-wing's rules? Because they're never going to abide by them. They always break their own rules. So you should never in any instance abide by their standards, their rules, because they will use them against you and never obey their own standards. You would think after years of this being obvious that people on the right would fucking understand it, but for whatever reason, they don't. I see this almost daily. People falling for this shit. And so what originated this for me to speak to this was this video by Bernie Sanders, which I'm not going to play because I refuse to. This is disgusting propaganda where these children are clearly being fed lines, and it's like they literally don't understand what they're saying. They are mentally incapable of understanding what they're agreeing to, what they're emphasizing, what politics they're espousing. They don't understand what they're saying. This is child exploitation. It absolutely is. Because it's not simply, a child actor saying, oh, buy Go-Gurt, buy Yahoo, buy Tim Hortons. This is not a child actor. This is someone's child that is politically sympathetic to you, Bernie Sanders, that you are hijacking for the use of spreading your message. This is you using a child as a spokesman who is attempting authenticity. You are attempting to make these children as authentic as possible. And that is, in my view, utterly immoral. We should not be utilizing children for the sake of spreading a political message, because these children are incapable of understanding and agreeing to what they are espousing. You are forcing them. You are coaching them. You are grooming them to espouse these lines, and it's not for the sake of getting paid as a child actor. It's because their parents are political sympathizers of yours. This is immoral. And I see this on the right. I see this on the right, and it's not moral. You can mimic the left all you want. You're never going to fucking beat them. I don't know what is wrong with people on the right, but they are dumb as fuck. Fact is that being that I am now a Republican, I believe that it is now within my purview to say that a percentage of the right is, in fact, dumb as a fucking sack of hammers. You guys should stop mimicking the left. Why do you simply concede the moral position for the sake of something that is not going to actually win you votes? This is not going to work for you, because you're trying to do so honestly when the opposition is doing so cynically. Stop doing this. Stop putting a MAGA hat on your kid. Stop putting your kid in a MAGA shirt. Stop doing this shit. It's cynical, it's immoral, and you look like a manipulative parent in doing so. Your children are not political actors. They cannot legally vote. They cannot legally participate in politics. Stop forcing them into it. And underneath this original tweet by me, I say, 1, I don't want to hear children read lines adults wrote for them. I don't take you or your message seriously. And this is immoral. Even though I do not have children, I cannot whatsoever understand parents who force their fucking children to do this. And the main point that I find is number 2, and it especially applies to the right. If you're on the right and you do this, I don't take you seriously. I actively dislike what you're doing. So you should not be doing this. I don't know whether this just is an appeal to women. Maybe women like grooming children for the sake of spreading political propaganda. Maybe that's who you're playing to. I'd have to look at some of the focus group testing to see if that's why this is being done. But this is child exploitation. This is not you as a child acting. This is you as a child being pushed by parents to read lines you are incapable of understanding. This is immoral. The second you do this, I look at you and I say, this is an immoral actor spreading propaganda using a technique that I simply cannot agree with. And it is, in fact, mimicking the left in a poor manner, an ineffective manner. Like I say, maybe this is effective with women. Maybe they like this. But I really, really don't. And there seems to be quite a few people that agree with me in that. They do not like this. And that's the question I have for you. Because I do know that I have people that listen to me that are parents. If you are a parent and you are willing to do this kind of thing, explain to me the reasoning. Explain to me the reasoning of not simply trying to, pass upon knowledge to your children in terms of what you believe is right for their lives and what may be right in politics to some extent, but when you are so fervent in your beliefs that you're actively putting your children in, political propaganda videos, I'm not sure what it is, what your motivation is, and that's what I need explained to me. I need the explanation given to me, because it seems like it's just an, unthoughtful mechanism of you simply trying to gin up your side. It's simply, whether it's conscious or not, I do see this as you seeing this as a matter of power. What is going to work? What do I think is effective? What do I think is going to help our side win? Oh, is it going to require me to, dress up my child, put him in front of a camera and have them coached, have them groomed to read lines they can't simply understand? Is that what it's going to require for us to win? Then fuck it, I'm going to do it. And I don't think that if you really want your kids to grow up and mirror your politics, I don't think this is going to work. I think that it's healthy for a child to be talked to about politics, to have their politics discussed, to have politics in general discussed at a certain age when they're capable of actually cognitively understanding what the fuck you're talking about. But at this age, are you kidding me? When they're like 5, 6, 7 years old, they're going to understand environmental regulation, they're going to understand economics, they're going to understand the free market, and they're going to understand, carcinogens and shit. You think they're going to fucking understand this? I don't think so. So, spare me. This is just partisan lunacy and it needs to stop. And I don't give a damn which side we're talking about here, because I've seen it happen on both. And while the left is just doing it in full force, there's people on the right mimicking it every single day of the week. I'm sure if you monitor Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any of these social media networks, every fucking day of the week, you are going to see a child, whether left wing or right wing, dressed up by the parents in political uniforms, in fact, and they don't have any understanding of what it is. My parents are on Team Red. My parents are on Team Blue, and I love my parents, therefore I'm going to do whatever and not complain because I'm getting attention. But here you are putting your fucking kids out on social media in a partisan manner and drawing negative attention from the other side. Oh, man, I got a death threat when I put my picture of a kid on social media. Social media and the internet is a fucking wasteland. This is a wasteland. Everyone knows what happens when you do shit on social media and online, okay? You go online, you say something divisive, some retard is going to call your place of employment, try to get you fucking fired. You know, you do something that is exploitative or looks like you're grooming your child, they're going to call CPS, they're going to call their school, they're going to call officials, they're going to call you and say mean things. They're going to leave nasty comments. Oh, man, I couldn't have anticipated this. You know, I've grown up with the internet. I'm a fucking millennial and I have kids. I've grown up with the internet and yet for some reason I don't understand this thing that's been present forever when it comes to being online. Stop acting in a freaking selfish, narcissistic manner. Stop trying to live vicariously through your children. Stop using your children as political props for your team winning. Stop doing this. But I will just leave it there. Thanks for listening.
Man don't care about all that. Who's not allowed? Man don't care about all that. Knock him out. Man don't care about all that. What about? Man don't care about all that. Just drop him out.